How typical that the humans should rely upon crude technology to protect them. How fitting that we, the Dark Eldar, should kill them where they feel safest. From Krageth of the Slaughtered Heart. Drukhari, like most Eldari kindred, make use of advanced technology, including anti-gravity devices, dark matter weaponry, nanotechnology, and psychic artifacts. While they do make use of psychic devices, they do not any longer use psychic powers themselves, because of the danger that interacting with the warp brings for those whose souls are desired by Slaanesh. Psykers are treated as playthings in Commodore, and given the twisted, sadistic nature of the Drukhari, this necessarily involves pain and torment. Though it is manufactured rather than psychically grown from the hardened substance of the warp like the wraith-bone implements of the craft world Eldari, the Drukhari's weaponry is just as technologically advanced as that of their more benevolent counterparts. When it comes to war, the Drukhari are veritable artists. Their technology is refined to the point that some of its effects appear as nothing less than magical to less advanced intelligent species like humanity. Their infinite, if infinitely dark, imaginations and sheer skill have led them down a sinister path. Their favorite weapons can set every nerve ending afire with pain, dark light beams, whips that bleed acid, and eldritch soul traps. They are so confident in their own abilities that their lightweight suits of body armor incorporate bladed plates not only for protection, but also to provide them with yet another weapon to inflict pain. The warriors of Commodore are well versed in the physiology and anatomies of all the other starfaring species of the galaxy, knowledge that is used to inflict the maximum amount of pain, suffering, and death. They employ a number of handheld weapons designed to eviscerate, lacerate, and incise at close quarters. Although varying widely in design and use, all employ a similar technology in their construction. They are built from very lightweight materials, with blades honed to a molecular edge capable of cutting through even ceramite armor plating when sufficient force is employed. Weapons incorporating powerful shock fields have also been recovered by Imperial forces. These devices utilize an energy generation and transference system as yet beyond the comprehension of human tech adepts. Drukhari Combat Doctrine. Explain your meaning, slave, and in plainer words, my translator unit has clearly fouled on your primitive tongue as it continues to incessantly repeat some nonsense phrase about a fair fight, whatever that might be intended to mean. From Archon Morigis to a defiant captive. The raiding parties of the Drukhari are able to suppress their treacherous natures only in pursuit of power, spoils, and slaves. When the cabals of Commorragh gather in large numbers, they darken the skies of unsuspecting worlds with their razor-edged anti-gravity craft and fall upon the unwary populations of the galaxy with extraordinary speed and their characteristic sadism. Everyone is fundamentally defined by his or her innate selfishness. Personal power, the pursuit of comfort, and the gratification of their dark desires are the only things which truly hold value for them. They take no pride in the achievements of others within their species, and measure every endeavor's worth in how it contributes to their own self-interest. The need for survival in a hostile galaxy is the only thing that bonds them together as a species, and thus, even in combat, they are not normally inclined to cooperate with one another beyond the bare minimum required. And yet, on occasion, an opportunity may present itself that even the greatest of the Archons is forced to admit cannot be seized by a single cabal acting alone. This could be an Imperial hive world whose teeming masses of humanity are ready to be culled. An Asuriani craft world drifting, unpowered and vulnerable to a slave raid, or a newly discovered intelligent alien species unaware of the dangers which haunt the galaxy. Such targets represent more than a single witch cult or cabal could hope to assault on its own without suffering crippling losses. But the potential rewards are so great that they prove willing to share the spoils with others within the Dark City. Drukhari society is splintered and lacking in any true unity. The Raiders of the Dark City owe their first allegiance to themselves, and then to the Cabal or witch cult to which they belong. Each of these factions constantly compete with one another in the pursuit of their divergent goals, and will happily betray or murder any of its allies of convenience once they have outlived their usefulness. Amongst the Drukhari, only the most devious and ruthless survive for long, and any alliance or coalition that forms does so only either out of greed or fear of its individual participants' rivals. The lure of thousands of souls to be enslaved and tortured, and immense amounts of wealth to be plundered, can draw them together to face a large or very well defended target. Power is the only truly palpable currency within Commorragh, and a successful attack on a target of unusual magnitude can secure extraordinary wealth and authority for those who were daring enough to carry it off. At the same time, no self-respecting Archon or succubus would willingly stand by while his or her rivals benefit from such a cooperative venture. As such, when large-scale assaults are in the offing, they can grow to unusually large proportions as jealous Drukhari nobles pledge their support for the raid, whilst all the time plotting ways to double-cross their newfound allies and seize all the plunder and prestige for themselves. While it is greed that forges these massive Drukhari assaults, it is fear that keeps them cooperative. The Drukhari are defined by their fear of many things, including death, loss of status, and the plots of their rivals. an unusually large war fleet allows them to hunt much larger and powerful victims. However, just as a raid that earns victory returns with great wealth and the envy of all Commodore, a failed raid will lead to a loss of standing amongst the participants and possibly enslavement by their rivals, who will immediately move to capitalize upon the raid leader's perceived weakness. By involving all of one's rivals in the attack, the risk of failure can be shared by all. Additionally, the nature of Comorach's vicious politics means that when a Drukhari faction seeks to move against its rivals, the blow needs to be decisive, overwhelming, and completely successful. Any less will result in the unleashing of civil strife that will see entire cabals and witch cults destroyed, thousands murdered amongst the spires of the Dark City, and slavery and torture for almost all, as the enemies of both sides seize their own advantage. Because of the terrible risks involved with such reprisals, the fear of these consequences keeps most of the double-dealing and treachery within a large war fleet to a minimum, until the participants return with their spoils to Commodore, of course. Now on to Realspace Raids. Every weapon your prey wields can be turned against them, given sufficient application of wit. From Archon Drukhari Zuskul. The strike forces of the Drukhari, despite consisting of treacherous and scheming murderers, work like well-turned machines upon the battlefield. Raids are planned in meticulous detail by the Archons and Succubi that lead them, and hidden routes through the webway are opened in readiness for the assault. Only the most capable are recruited for each Realspace raid, which is why Drukhari warriors are such determined opponents, and why their bitter rivalries are set aside during battle. Working in concert ensures that not only is the greatest amount of punishment inflicted upon Realspace, but also that the maximum number of victims can be taken back to Commodore. Vendettas are revisited only once the captives are divided, for above all the Dark City requires a steady intake of fresh souls. The Cabals regularly launch piratical invasions, so there is much to be gained from being part of such an organization. The thrill of hunting lesser mortals, the chance to personally capture new slaves, but most importantly, the revitalizing feast of unbridled destruction at a hunt's end. Upon the Cabal's return to Commodore, thousands of captives will be traded as currency, put to work in the hellish depths of the weapons shops, rendered down in flesh-throughs, or tormented unto death, their demise drawn out so that their captors can gain the greatest amount of sustenance from their misery. Though many raiding forces coalesce around the warriors of a particular cabal, the Drukhari armies that fall upon Realspace are far from uniformly Cabalite in their composition. The witch cults who entertain Comorite society with their nightly displays of ultra-violence are powerful military organizations in their own right. Many Archons will insist upon recruiting bands of witches from the cult they patronize, for such warrior acrobats make deadly shock troops. Similarly, the vile, homunculus covens that lurk in the bowels of Comorach have standing armies of their own. These shambling hordes of flesh-twisted nightmares are often purchased to bulk out a raid with frightening and resilient warriors, or else accompany their leering creators as bodyguards and assistants both. Typical raiding parties will have their ranks swelled further by hirelings or opportunists from the many mercenary subcultures that exist within Comorach, whooping gangs of Hellions and hurtling Reaver jet bikes perform high-speed flyby strikes. Jagged supersonic aircraft and flocks of murderous scourges supply the Kabbalites with air cover, while hovering Ravager gunships pick off armored targets with contemptuous ease. Incubi, mandrakes, grotesques, and other freakish specialists lend a raiding party strength and versatility, and it is common for a powerful Archon to surround himself with as many such varied warriors as they can. The process of recruiting such multifaceted raiding parties is known in the Dark City as Calathriel eth Indris Clav, or tailoring the toxin to the blade, and is intended to ensure a raiding party can swiftly and decisively overcome any opposition, no matter its nature or strengths. Sometimes a powerful witch cult will organize its own raid, marshalling whole fleets of raiders and venoms to bear its bands of gladiatrixes into battle. Such raids will often be executed with a specific acquisition in mind, be it deadly new beasts for the arenas or esoteric living ingredients to render down into the potent cocktails of combat drugs that the witch cults favor. A raiding force of witches prefers close assault over all other forms of warfare, and will often be supported by beastmasters, reavers, and other such warriors of the arenas. Some witch cults, most notably the Pain Eternal, are as active in raiding Realspace as the most warlike of the cabals, channeling their fearsome resources into proving their skills in battle against the varied foes of the galaxy at large. Similarly, the covens of the homunculi will sometimes launch raids of their own volition, though usually content to squat like bloated spiders amid their webs of shadow and pain. The homunculi need a steady flow of victims as much as any other part of Comorite society. Many of the more discerning ones prefer to orchestrate raids of their own, picking out those they wish captured with a discerning eye, or savouring the act of indulging their own peculiar tastes with the relish of a connoisseur. A homunculi coven at war is a terrifying sight, a rampaging tide of warped bone and bulging vein muscle that glitters with a myriad of blades and needles. Grotesques thunder into the enemy ranks alongside buzzing, clicking engines of pain, while the gruesome weapons of the homunculi torment, rupture, and liquefy the foe in spectacular fashion. The Flaying. Drukhari raiding forces never attack the foe directly, but use their speed, mobility, and the advantage of surprise to attack swiftly and then withdraw, with the intent of slowly bleeding the foe dry. As a result of this tactical doctrine, their forces never gather in a single place that would leave them open to an enemy counterattack. This also allows them to attack the foe where he is weakest. During large battles, they favor a style of combat that might be considered a wave attack. The Drukhari in large war fleets assaulting well-defended targets organize themselves into successive waves, made up of units with differing tactical capabilities, and destroy the enemy in a series of separate but linked sequential assaults. Each wave will target a specific type of enemy unit, or will pursue a specific tactical objective, which weakens the foe's defenses just in time to face the next assault wave. After several such waves, the enemy force's defenses are stripped away, until only the weakest units are left to be ripped apart in the final assault. As a result, the Drukhari refer to this combat doctrine as the Flaying. By attacking the most dangerous enemy units with the lightning-fast assault that only they are capable of, the Drukhari are able to create the opportunity for their other units to move into position and attack the survivors. The faster vanguard waves buy the time needed for the slower units to outflank the enemy and deliver the coup de grace. An example of the Flaying proceeds as follows. Wave 1, Splinter Raid. Striking without warning. A Splinter Raid comprised of a single Archon and his bodyguard of Kabbalite Trueborns on a raider, 2 Reaver jetbike squads and 3 other squads of raiders attack the foe from out of the sky after emerging from a webway portal, destroying and pinning those enemy troops that present the gravest threat. Wave 2, Strike from the Shadows. In the second wave, 2 squads of Scourges drop out of the sky and use their dark lances to target the vulnerable rear armor of enemy armored vehicles, while 2 squads of Mandrakes appear from the shadows themselves to assault enemy infantry unexpectedly who are taking cover from the Scourges. Wave 3, Mounted Cabals and Cults. A much larger wave of swift-moving dark Eldar troops comprising an Archon and his bodyguard of Kabbalite Trueborns on a raider, 2 squads of raiders, a squad of Hellions, a Ravager, and an entire witch cult transported by a raider swoop in to engage the survivors of the earlier wave's attacks, and in particular, this wave targets enemy command units. And the final wave, Wave 4, Cabals and Cults on foot. By the time the 4th wave of the Flaying breaks upon the foe, the slowest elements of the Dark Eldar Warfleet have had time to join the attack. This wave includes 2 squads of Kabbalite warriors, 2 squads of witches, and a pack of warp beasts led by a Beastmaster. This wave moves in for the kill on the ground and catches the enemy defenders between their own advance and the Dark Eldar elements already engaged from the sky, crushing the enemy in a classic hammer and anvil movement. Once the defenders are defeated, the torture and culling of the population into hideous enslavement will begin.